Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Ladybug Laboratory Podcast, and I am your host, Lily. This is a podcast all about the joys of loving your craft, and I'm glad to have you with me today. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Thank you so much for returning, and I hope that you continue to enjoy it. If you're a new viewer, thank you for giving me a try. I really appreciate all the time that you guys put into this podcast, and I hope you like what you see. So, you can find me on Ravelry as ladybuglily. You can find me on Instagram as ladybug.lily, and there is a Ravelry group for the podcast called the Ladybug Laboratory Podcast Group, and I suggest that you go there. Go ahead and introduce yourself in the introductions thread. That's where there's show notes as well as our knit-alongs, and there's an Ask the Ladybug thread. And as I've been transitioning into this new format, I've been looking through the Ask the Ladybug thread for potential topics to cover. Thank you all for your wonderful feedback on my two-part section. Those of you that gave me some criticism, I will really try to do that. I know there were some concerns about the audio, but otherwise, everything seems good to go. So without further ado, let's get started. Today I am drinking London Fruit and Herb Strawberry and Vanilla Fool. I'm pretty sure that somebody gave this to me, but I'm not sure exactly who, and I'm drinking it in my Ladybug mug. We have a knit-along going on in the group right now. This is the Selfish Make-Along. So the idea of this Selfish Make-Along is that you are knitting, crocheting, weaving, spinning, some Ravelry-supported craft. Something for yourself, something that you are enjoying making. It's not something you feel like you have to make, it's something you want to do. So I have gotten a few questions about the Selfish Make-Along. There are a lot of people who have asked about maybe a scrap blanket, because that's something that's for you that you would like to work on. If you are loving your blanket, if you're showing your blanket love and you're actually enjoying doing it, I don't mind you guys entering that in the finished objects thread, even though it's not really finished. That's fine. As well, there's a few people that have already entered in the finished object thread. So the Sticky Stitch has put in a sweater. Briam Chavez has put in some fingerless mitts, as well as a pair of socks. And Karenina 4777 has put in a beautiful shawl. So that's all that's in the finished object thread so far. I mentioned last episode that I will be drawing for prizes both from the chatter thread as well as the finished object thread. So if you're working on something that's for yourself, go ahead and head on over, put that in. So while we're on the topic of the knit-along, I wanted to take a moment and explain how the prizes are going to work. So I'm going to be using the random number generator, and I will be picking prizes every 2 months. So at the end of February, the end of April, June, August, October, and December. And there will be a big grand prize at the end of the year in December. But for now, what I've decided to do is have 3 prizes for every of those 2-month sections. And there will be a bigger one, a medium-sized one, and a smaller one. Every package will be getting what I'm going to call a bundle of goodies. You'll be getting a stitch marker tin from Selkie Studio. You'll be getting some stitch markers and a couple of other little goodies that I'm going to throw in as some surprises. So every package will be getting that. For the first set, the prizes that are going out in February, what I will be doing is I will be picking 1 from the chatter thread, 1 from the finished objects thread, and 1 that could be either. So the chatter thread one will be a bundle of joy. The finished object thread package will be getting a bundle of joy along with 3 skeins, of Cascade 220 fingering in the Jack-o'-lantern colorway. This is 50 grams, 250 meters, and 273 yards per skein. The either or prize will be receiving a bundle of joy as well as one skein of Cascade 220 fingering in the black, which again is also 50 grams, 273 yards, 250 meters. So those are the prizes that are going to be for that. Cal, go ahead and get your chatter in, get your finished objects in. I apologize if you can hear the rain. It really started pouring right now. But without further ado, let's move on to finished objects. So the first finished object to talk about today is one that I actually finished in 2016, but I told you that I wasn't going to show you until I knew that the recipient has gotten it. And she has. So I can officially tell you that my Podcaster Festive Sock Swap socks run through Eva Christie of the Eva Christie Hand Knitting podcast, went to Inga Rus of the Knitting Diaries podcast, and I will be putting pictures in here. And I used the Honeymoon Socks pattern by Nettie Compton. It is a free pattern, and I did chart it up because I found the directions a little bit confusing. I will put the chart in my notes if you want to knit that. I used a blue yarn for the body of the sock, which was Swan's Island Natural Colors Merino Worsted. It was not superwash, and it was dyed with indigo. And then the cuff, toes, and heels I did in Miss Babs Yowza in the corset colorway, which is leftovers from my Sontag that I knit for my mother-in-law. And those went off to Inga Rus. She says that they fit wonderfully. I found that they were incredibly soft. I liked the pattern, and I'm thinking of making it again for myself, but I did have trouble because I did them 2 at a time, and I'm not sure that I really liked that. I had a lot of trouble keeping the yarns from getting tangled. So my next finished object is one that you saw last episode in my works in progress, and that is my magical dice bag. So I'm just going to show this to you for a second because it's so sparkly. Woo! So last time that you saw this, it was a work in progress. I had knit the base of the bag, and then I had picked up stitches along the edge with both yarns. Oh, cat's throwing up. Sorry if you can hear that. So I had picked up along the edge with both yarns, and I was working on the inside lining portion. I actually ended up frogging that inside portion. I'm going to take the dice out so that it stops jingling. Okay, I actually ended up frogging that inside portion for a variety of reasons, most of which boiled down to I wanted it to be thinner than the outside so that you didn't really see it through. So I frogged back to the beginning, put that on spare needles, and then I knit the outside first. And the outside was knit with Adirondack Yarns, Adirondack Yarn Company, this sort of sequiny base. I had a lot of trouble knitting this. Not because the pattern was difficult, but just because the yarn, it's not chain plied as in it's actually plied, it's literally like a crochet chain with sequins in it, and I kept sticking my needles in the wrong places. It was kind of annoying and irritating. I'm glad that I did it. I'm really happy with the result. It's got these hues of purple, which you really can't see, but they're there, as well as like a teal and a dark blue. Let's see, maybe a little bit of purple, you can sort of see it. So then I went back and I knit up. So I used an entire skein. Remember, I had purchased 2, but I only ended up using 1, and I used exactly the skein. I had less than a meter left. Then I went back to the inside, knit that up, and this was all done in size US 2.5. And I'm pulling up the, size US 2.5 needles, which is 3 millimeters. So the inside was done with Miss Bab's Yummy 2-ply in the oyster colorway. And so I knit back up with this inside layer. Then when I got to the top, I just knit that first row. I knit that row at the very top as a knit 2 together, okay? And I would knit one from the front and one from the back. And then I just followed the pattern as written, making my picots and, my cords and all of that. One thing that I noticed about this yarn, it does not stay knotted and it does not stay. It just unravels constantly. So I made incredibly long yarn tails, and then I knotted several times, and I used fray check over the knots, and then I cut the yarn tails a little bit after the knots. I didn't weave anything in because it just kept unraveling. So the knots are actually free, but they're free in between the two layers, so you don't see them. But this is my dice bag. I'm really, really happy with it. I feel the need to get dice that match it right now. Right now I've got my green and my brown set. Here you go. But I might just get some dice that match the outside. So there we go. That is my second finished object. And my last finished object for today is what looks like a dishcloth. And I actually spoke about this last time when I talked about my family life blanket. And I made a new square for the blanket. So I'll show this to you close up. This is knit. This is my Las Vegas square. This is a cotton linen blend yarn. Trendsetter Yarns Lino hand dyed. It's a worsted weight. And it's interesting, I didn't realize that it was sort of striping up like this until after I had already finished it. And it does follow a pattern, which was for Las Vegas, but you can't really see it. And I love how subtle it is. So there's a heart, a spade, club, and a diamond. And I really like this. It took me about a day to knit. The pattern is Wildcard dishcloth. Oh, I forgot to say my dice bag pattern was the sock candy bag. This one is the Wildcard dishcloth. It is by Kat McCabe. It is a $2 pattern, so I'm not going to give too much away. It was easy to follow. I may have changed stuff about it if I were to knit it again, but it was easy to follow, and I enjoyed it. So that is another finished object for today. And let's move on. I'm going to sort of combine two sections right now. And first off, I would like to give a little bit of a pod love shout out to the Color and Life podcast. Jennifer and John Michael have really inspired me, and in a lot of ways I feel like I'm copying their technique and their method. I highly encourage you to go and check out what they're doing. They've got a great podcast. They're incredibly enthusiastic. The cat is distracting me right now. I don't know what he's doing. So they've got a great podcast. They're incredibly enthusiastic, and they're really honest and real. I really love tuning into their episodes every week. They do a similar format that I do, where they record it once and then they split it into 2 parts. And that's actually where I got the idea from. But on the note of that pod love, what they have decided to do for the new year is they're having a maker of the month. And every month they're picking someone, usually a yarn dyer, but it might not always be a yarn dyer, that they're featuring on their podcast as their maker of the month. What? What do you want? I don't know why the cat is meowing at me. So their maker of the month for January is Wicked You Fiber Arts. And I decided, in the spirit of my stash love, how I really want to enjoy and appreciate these wonderful, wonderful yarns, and at the same time manage my stash and get rid of the stuff that I don't appreciate so that I can make room for what I love. I decided, in the spirit of that, I was going to get an order from every one of their makers of the month. So, for January, I have this one. This is from Wicked You Fiber Arts. I'll just show you some of the colors. It's got these blues, greens, a little bit of orangey, peachy, some yellow, and let's see, there's some brown. This is a one-of-a-kind colorway, and I saw it on her website, and it's an Etsy shop, and I absolutely fell in love with it. You're going to hear me talk a little bit more about this in part 2, because I'm pretty sure that I know what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to be casting this on as soon as possible. I love it. This is 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. It's fingering weight, 400 yards, 200 grams. And I'm super happy with it. And the other one that I purchased was deep maroon graffitied. So it's got this deep purple with speckles. Dark blue speckles, some black speckles, a little bit of pinky speckles. It's deep maroon graffitied, 75 superwash merino, 25 nylon, fingering weight, 462 yards per 100 grams. So I really love that one as well. And she actually went ahead and put a progress keeper in my package. This is what it came on. I don't know if that's because I got the deep maroon graffitied or just because I got 2 skeins and she gave me a progress keeper, but it matches, makes me very happy. So, in the future, some of these skeins that I purchase as a part of the Color and Life Maker of the Month may be going to some make-along prizes. You never know. So that is sort of my stash love / acquisitions. It's mostly perpetuating the Maker of the Month idea because I really like that idea. I love celebrating the wonderful makers in our community. So I did get a question on one of my episodes over the past couple of weeks, and this is from Kathy Brewer. And she says, I collect ladybugs. Is there a way to knit a ladybug for beginners? That is a great question, Kathy. I have actually never knit a ladybug. So what I did is I went into Ravelry and I found a bunch of different ladybug patterns and I started categorizing them. And she mentioned that she wanted a ladybug for beginners, so I assumed she meant a physical ladybug. But there's also a lot of beginner patterns for a variety of different techniques that include ladybugs. So I wanted to take a moment and highlight some ladybug patterns that are on Ravelry. I have made a bundle of this on my Ravelry account, and I will link to that in the show notes. So, for a great beginner ladybug pattern, there is a dishcloth called Ladybug. As it is just a dishcloth, there we go. It's not actually a physical ladybug because it's a dishcloth, but for a beginning knitter, that's a great pattern. It's by Melissa Berglund Burnham. There's another one, it's free. There's another one called Ladybug, Ladybug, Fly Away Home, which is also a dishcloth. This one is not free. It's by Allie Barrett. There. So those are 2 great patterns for really beginning knitters. In terms of a physical ladybug, I found this one. A lot of these are just called Ladybug, so I don't know much about that. But I found this one, which is called Ladybug. It's by Linda Dawkins, and I looked at this pattern and it looked really simple. But if you're a super beginner knitter, I highly suggest that you do it not in fingering weight yarn. It'll be a little bit bigger, but it'll be a lot easier to see what you're doing. But this is her Ladybug. And again, these will all be linked in the show notes. Another ladybug, a physical, like a ladybug pattern that I found is actually a pin cushion. It's a ladybug pin cushion. It's by Loli Fuertes. This one is $2 on Ravelry. So here's a picture of the ladybug with the pins coming out of it. And here is a top view. My goodness. Of the ladybug. So those are the first sort of beginner patterns that I found. I also found a couple that are good starting places for other things. So for instance, I found some ladybug booties, and these look like they're a great starting place for some other techniques. Splitting, casting on, Kitchener, etc. So these are by Christiana somebody, I'll get it in a second. This is what they look like. They're little baby booties. They are by Christiana something. Sorry, it disappeared. There's also a nice hat that is a great beginner hat. Why won't it let me click on it? Yeah. By Nona Davenport, which is just called Ladybug Hat. And I also found some good patterns for color work. A lot of people have mentioned how they're so impressed by the stranded color work that I knit, and I wanted to say a couple of things about that. First of all, it took me an incredibly long time to be comfortable with color work, and at first I was like, I'm gonna dive right in and make this massive project, and it's the first time I've done color work and the first time that I felt, and it was a disaster. I had to throw the whole thing out, and it was $200 worth of yarn. It was awful. But since then I took a class, I've been practicing, and I've gotten a lot better. I wouldn't say that I'm great at it yet, but I've gotten a lot better. And that first trial of stranded color work was in 2012. Yeah. So, 2013. So if you're struggling with stranded color work, please don't feel like somehow I magically have it figured out. I don't. It took me a really long time, and I still don't feel like I have it figured out. But that said, through trial and error, I am a lot more aware of what good patterns are to start with color work. So I did find a couple in my Ladybug search that would be really great starter color work patterns. So there's this one. It's a hat. So this hat is by Deborah somebody. I got rid of it again. And it's just called Ladybugs. And the other great starter color work pattern that I found is called Ladybug Picnic Mitts by Eleanor Brown. And as soon as the picture loads, I'll show you. And this one also involves a Latvian braid. I don't know if you can see that. I've actually never done a Latvian braid, so I might have to try these out. And I could not resist a couple of crochet patterns. There's some baby toys, a couple more hats, but most importantly for me, because let's be realistic, this is really what I care about, is this amazing, amazing pattern by Abby Jackson. And it's a cat costume! My cat would kill me if I ever did that. Oh my gosh, I would not live to see the day. Oh man. But I just thought it was adorable, and I might have to make it anyway. So those are some good beginner Ladybug patterns that I found. Kathy, I hope that was helpful to you, and I will be putting this bundle in my show notes so that you can refer back to it. So I've just got one more section today, and this is actually not knitting related. It's still crafty, but it's not knitting. So if you were just here for knitting, have a good day. And otherwise, I'm going to be talking about some soap that I made. Now, I have been making soap for a long time, and I don't do it professionally. I don't really even worry about making it pretty. I did try and put some lavender dye in this one. It kind of worked. It wasn't great. But I do hot process soap, which is done in the crock pot, and there's a technique to it. You put in your oils, your fats as they're considered, and then you dissolve some lye in water, and you put that in with your oils. You wait for them to come to trace, and the cool thing about hot process soap is that at this point you can add in other things and put them into the soap. So you can add in herbs, you can add in essential oils, things that smell good, things that look cool, little hidden treasures in the soap, at which point you pour the soap into a container. And I literally just use a casserole dish and I line it with like a grocery bag, a plastic grocery bag, so that I can pull it out later. So you want to have your container lined, and that's why you can see the grocery bag lines. And you pour it in, and then you wait 4 or 5 days until it's really solid, and you cut it open. So this is a set of soap that I made actually quite a while ago, and I set it aside to harden and completely forgot about it. So I just cut it up a couple of days ago, and this is just generic soap. This is my soap making journal. So I used olive oil, almond oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, and some orchid and lavender coloring, as well as some lavender essential oil. And what I like about hot process is you literally cook it in the crock pot. So you neutralize the lye during that process. For cold process soap, you would neutralize the lye over a 4 to 6 week period of time. And it's prettier, it's more translucent, but it's hard by the time the lye is neutralized. And with hot process soap, after you've neutralized the lye, then you can add things. You can add your coloring then. You can add your trinkets or your essential oils or your herbs, and that way they're not corrupted by the lye. It does make the soap opaque, which some people don't like as much. They want a handmade soap that's translucent. I don't really do anything with this soap other than give it as gifts and use it myself. But I just thought I would show you guys that because it was another little crafty thing that I've completed recently. So that is going to be all for today. This episode was recorded on January 21st, Sunday, and it will go live on January 25th, which is a Wednesday. And I hope that you all are having a wonderful day and that you had fun watching it. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you later. Bye.